bringing together the Icelandic government and UN Women. Many different private sector companies pledged to do their bit to try and get electricity to remote rural communities and small island states in many parts of Africa and Asia, not yet connected. And I was counting, some of the pledges went well over 100 million. So we are slowly getting there step by step. And yes, another very bold pledge I was struck by was from the Green Climate Fund that said SDG 7 is achievable. SDG 7 meaning that 800 million people currently without electricity, over 3 billion people without access to clean cooking fuels will be part of the modern energy world by 2030. I think, though, looking back on yesterday, the most passionate voice of all for me came from a young woman in Khartoum. Do you remember her? Nasreen Al-Saim, the UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group advisor on climate change. And she said to us that we have to speed up our urgency. We have to bring in the timelines. Otherwise, her country, Sudan, well, it may no longer be here as she knows it in 2050. Well, that made me sit up and listen. And so therefore, we thought today we're going to plunge into our agenda with another young voice, going over to Bolivia to join Paula Flores Carvajal from the Global Youth Energy Outlook at Student Energy. And she wants to hear some big, bold promises from the leaders at the high-level dialogue tomorrow.
My name is Paola Flores. I'm from Bolivia and I'm part of the Global Youth Energy Outlook at Student Energy. Living in the rural areas of my country made me understand how important is electricity access for indigenous communities, because it means to access a better education, to access a well-structured health services. And it is a right because it means giving a better quality of life to people. Now we need world leaders to increase electricity, but also to secure communities with affordable energy, because energy poverty is not only not having access to electricity, but not having the resources to pay for it. So we need electricity access projects developed by and with communities and world leaders in governance spaces.
Paola from Bolivia, that's not just about access, it's about affordable access to energy. And now for our opening remarks, I'm going to hand over to Damilola Ogunbuyi, the CEO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of UN Energy. And she joins us live now from the UN studios in New York City. Damilola.
Thank you so much, Anisha, and thank you for your roundup of yesterday. So yesterday, we began to shine the light on some energy compacts, showcasing bold ambition and commitments that are designed to accelerate action on the clean energy transition, as well as ending energy poverty. The diversity in the commitment showcases how we all have to work together and why this process must be inclusive. Today, we're going to hear about more energy compacts from world leaders, once again demonstrating what leadership looks like and making the case for more of you to please join us on our 9-year journey towards achieving SDG 7 and also towards achieving net zero by 2050. We need to move beyond
interrelated challenges, the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, the developer gains that it has jeopardized, climate change, and very many humanitarian crises that continue to bubble along. Energy access for all. Where does that sit in her inbox? Well, let's find out now and cross over and join live Samantha Power. A big warm welcome.
Thank you so much. And good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you find yourself. I would like to start by thanking Special Representative Ogunbiyi and Secretary General Guterres for convening this important forum today. As you know, this is the first General Assembly dialogue to focus on energy in more than 40 years. This itself is a remarkable, and I think if we're honest, quite unfortunate fact. To say that this gathering is overdue is not to do it justice, but it is a tribute to those who have organized it. If we are serious about ending poverty, then we need to end energy poverty to unlock the productivity that fuels economic growth. If we're serious, as we say we are, about expanding opportunity for women and girls and giving rural women in poor countries options beyond manual labor like milling grain and gathering firewood, then we need to expand access to electricity so they can enter the formal economy. If we want children to study without having to gather under streetlights, if we want COVID-19 vaccines to stay cold on their way from ports to remote villages, and if we want countries to prosper while fighting climate change at the same time, then we need to provide reliable, affordable, clean energy to the nearly 760 million people whose day ends at nightfall, 75% of whom are in sub-Saharan Africa. Since 2013, the United States' Power Africa initiative has worked with partner countries to bring electricity to more than 118 million people across the continent, taking advantage of revolutions in technologies like off-grid solar and wind, run-of-river hydropower, and improved battery storage to help renewable energy solutions reach last-mile communities. In areas where these interventions have occurred, parents no longer have to worry that the smoke from kerosene lanterns might suffocate their children while they stay up reading. Farmers and fishermen won't lose the majority of their harvests or catches because they have no way to refrigerate their goods before they spoil. And health clinics in these communities where Power Africa has made progress, health clinics in Africa, 1 in 4 of which do not have access to electricity, are able to keep the lights on to treat patients and help deliver children. Because medical emergencies don't wait for sunrise or diesel generators to be refueled. Tomorrow, I'm pleased to say, Secretary Kerry will unveil the Biden administration's plan to partner with countries in Africa and elsewhere to transition their economies to clean energy and to take advantage of new renewable technologies that undeniably demonstrate that societies can grow and go green at the same time. As renewable energy gets cheaper, batteries grow more effective, and the gains of electrification become clearer, the world can do both. In fact, we know we must. And I hope this gathering becomes an inflection point in recognizing just how urgent clean electrification is in the lives of those who do not have power. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Samantha Power. You put it so very clearly to us. If we are serious about ending poverty, then we have to end energy poverty, a slogan to carry us through today. Samantha Power there, Vice President from USAID, of course, Administrator of USAID. And now I'm going to introduce you to the Vice President for Infrastructure at the World Bank, Riccardo Politi. He has recently stepped into these shoes. Where does climate infrastructure stand amongst his very many priorities in his full inbox? Over to you, Mr. Politi.
Good morning, Nisha. Good morning, everybody. Excellencies, distinguished guests. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I see everybody is calling from different parts of the world. Let's take a moment today to celebrate the great progress made to advance renewable energies that are accelerating the clean, affordable, inclusive energy transition. Over the past decade, renewable energy and battery storage innovations have expanded and improved access to electricity, connecting millions of poor and remote households. At the same time, new technologies like offshore wind, blue and green hydrogen, as well as carbon capture and storage, are promising new decarbonization opportunities that can drive the sustainable energy access for all. While these innovations are promising, much more needs to be done to radically transform the way we produce and consume energy, to drastically reduce emissions while at the same time meeting developing countries' growing energy demand with clean, sustainable, inclusive, and affordable energy. So how do we meet this growing demand for energy access while cutting down on emissions? The answer is a swift, well-managed retirement of coal and other high emissions power plants and a massive scale-up in renewable energy and energy efficiency. The energy transition requires an immediate focus on deploying existing low-cost technologies in the power sector that power transportation, buildings, and industry with clean electricity. Solar and wind energy must increase to 4 times the record set in 2020 to replace fossil fuel-based energy, to achieve universal access to energy, and to meet growing demand for electricity. And this must be done in a way that is just for all, protecting the livelihoods of communities that face the costs of transition away from coal. So how do we get there? We need 3 key ingredients: clear political commitment to energy transition targets, supportive policy frameworks, and financing. Governments need to establish energy transition targets with credible implementation plans and halt further investments in new coal-fired power plants while retiring and repurposing coal assets. Scaling up the deployment of renewable energy requires a scaling up of financing commensurate to the size of the challenge. Global investment must rise from an average of $1 trillion annually over the last 5 years to an average of almost $2 trillion annually, and then double that towards the end of the decade. $35 billion must be mobilized for electricity access and $25 billion for clean cooking annually. The World Bank Group is working hand in hand with countries to accelerate this transition to a more affordable, cleaner, and inclusive energy. We are supporting investments in energy efficiency, renewable energy, and both grid and off-grid energy access with data-driven planning, project preparation, institutional strengthening, improvement of utility performance, and energy subsidy reforms. We are also scaling up our investments in clean cooking. The World Bank committed $8.4 billion in clean energy investments, including renewable energy access, in the past 5 years, and we plan to increase that enormously. Developing countries require an unprecedented volume of financing to transform their energy sector at an unprecedented speed and scale in the coming decades. We will do our share, catalyzing change at scale to achieve ambitions and joining forces with development partners to achieve impact by mobilizing and deploying capital commensurate with this challenge. The compact the World Bank is presenting to the UN commits to support to providing 100 million people with access to clean cooking and up to 60 million people with access to electricity between now and 2025. With that, I conclude, and I thank all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Riccardo Politi from the World Bank, giving us a comprehensive overview there of how the World Bank intends to ramp up its investment in infrastructure projects to deliver renewable energy at scale over the next 9 years. And I'm glad to hear that he also mentioned clean cooking and the need to put considerably more effort into that area too. Now, with great pleasure, let me introduce you to our next speaker, Her Excellency UNGA76, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme, UNEP. How does she see SDG 7 in the context of the other global goals and the road to COP26? Over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much. And I send you all greetings from beautiful Nairobi, where the United Nations Environment Programme are proud to be headquartered. So when it comes to energy, I think we all face what seems like a dilemma. On the one hand, climate change is hitting harder every year. This year we saw the strong warning from the IPCC, and we saw impacts on floods and wildfires and droughts. Many perhaps for the first time realize that no one is safe. The updated climate promises under the Paris Agreement aren't good enough, we know now, to prevent dangerous warming that will bring more disruption. So to get back on track to 1.5, that goal that we set, emissions from this sector need to be halved by 2030 and eliminated by 2050. But on the other hand, we need to address energy poverty. As we just heard, despite significant progress, an estimated 660 million people still lack access to electricity in 2030, most of them in sub-Saharan Africa. So to provide energy equity and connectivity and access for all, we have to rapidly expand the energy access. And that would mean more greenhouse gas emissions and more pain if we follow the current energy models. But in truth, this is not a dilemma. We can expand access to energy. We can cut emissions at the same time if we accelerate a transition to clean, efficient, and affordable energy. UNEP, my organization's emissions gap research, has shown that the energy sector can cut 12.5 gigatons off its annual emissions, about a quarter of the total global emissions. And the benefits from the energy transition do not stop at climate change. Investing in the energy transition would create 3 times more jobs than similar investments in fossil fuels. To give you one example, building efficiency retrofits and efficient new buildings can create between 10 and 30 jobs per million of dollars spent. This is the most cost-efficient job measure in the entire energy sector. And of course, providing clean and efficient energy will reduce air pollution. We just saw WHO out with their new report today, and help with the quality education and healthcare, as we heard Ms. Powers speak to, as well as many other social benefits. Now, we all know about the role of renewables in this transition. We have to accelerate that development and the spread of renewables, including through technology transfer that will help nations meet their conditional nationally determined contributions. But we can't place enough emphasis on the need to have an accompanying push on energy efficiency across the board. We need to keep using energy. We need to stop using energy in that same wasteful way. And we need to demand that we have grids powered by clean energy. Otherwise, we will not be able to cope. Better and more efficient technologies already exist, including those nature has put right at our disposal for millennia, such as the natural cooling of greenery and green infrastructure and breezeways and so on. All of this obvious potential is why UNEP places so much focus on clean and efficient energy, working with countries, cities, sectors, and communities to enable that energy transition. Our work with partners show that we can achieve what we can achieve if we act in a comprehensive and integrated way. We support solutions that act across sectors, innovative technologies, policy, and finance tools that bring nature into the equation many times. There are many examples of this transformative work. With UNEP's support, Rwanda, for example, has started to implement a national plan on sustainable cooling. Ghana has launched a financial mechanism that supports ordinary citizens to purchase highly efficient cooling products. We are creating roadmaps for the decarbonization of energy in buildings and construction, including through green procurement, passive design, natural cooling solutions like green roofs, and deep retrofits. So, Excellencies and friends, the launch of this dialogue on energy compacts gives us a chance to rally around the solutions and accelerate actions for transformational opportunities. And I call on everyone to join the Urban Energy Coalition, recently launched by UNEP, by Mission Innovation, by the Global Covenant of Mayors, and the World Economic Forum, and REN21. That coalition will help cities to reduce their energy use through providing practical frameworks and tools. And the Cool Coalition is another great example of an initiative that is making a real difference. This coalition works on sustainable cooling and cold chains, which will cut energy use and expand access to systems that reduce food waste and loss, and store life-saving vaccines. There are many more opportunities, obviously, here on the cooling side. The point is that we know that what we need to do. We know even how to do it. And the support and collaborative networks that we need are all in place. It's time for words and good intentions to become immediate and meaningful action. We have a duty of care to the planet and to everyone upon it. We must fulfill it by making our energy systems clean, efficient, and affordable. Thank you, and back over to you.
Thank you so much, Inga Anderson. That was a great contribution, and good to hear what you were saying about the Cool Coalition, because It's going to be joining us a little bit later today to tell us about the nuts and bolts of the new energy compact and what it's hoping to deliver. We're going to cross over now to Nigeria, which has been a leading voice amongst developing countries to make sure that we have a just transition at the heart of the energy transition and the climate agenda. Nigeria has developed its energy transition plan in a way which is both ambitious but also quite challenging and is going to be difficult to implement. So let's find out more now from the Minister of State for Nigeria for the Environment, the Honorable Sharon Ikeaza.
Thank you very much, Nisha. Good morning, everyone. Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, it's an absolute pleasure for me to speak with you all today and give those keynote remarks and to also preview Nigeria's energy compact. Let me begin by reaffirming Nigeria's commitment to a just and equitable transition in our role as a global theme champion for the theme on energy transition. We're all at a critical point for the global energy sector, as we now have less than 10 years to go until the SDG 7 deadline, and we remain off track for achieving universal access by 2030. This should be viewed as a global emergency, as without achieving SDG 7 by 2030, we cannot achieve a global energy transition to net zero by 2050. It's imperative then that we take this dialogue as an opportunity to raise ambition towards achieving SDG 7. And I commend UN Energy for leading this bold initiative on energy compacts. I must add, however, that without the financing to execute, our commitments will all mean nothing. The Global North must also support with a clean energy offer to help developing nations achieve universal access by 2030. In addition to financing, another key success factor for a just transition is global political alignment on the role of gas. Nigeria has recently developed its energy transition plan, which has shown that without a full electrification of our economy across sectors, we cannot achieve net zero by 2050. Gas will have to play a key role before being phased out, as it will help scale up our generation capacity while also giving our grid the flexibility to integrate renewables. This energy transition plan also highlighted that we will need to spend $400 billion above business as usual over the next 30 years to reach this net zero target, further stressing the need to have a clean energy offer on the table. Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, I would like to now give a preview of Nigeria's energy compact commitments. First and foremost, Nigeria has committed to electrifying 5 million households and 25 million people by 2030 using decentralized renewable energy in the form of various solar technologies. It's expected that this program will create 250,000 jobs and kick off Nigeria's efforts to close its energy access deficit by 2030. Implementation of this program is already ongoing. However, total private sector investment of up to 630 million is required to support these efforts. Nigeria has also committed to a national gas expansion program, which cuts across areas such as residential clean cooking, captive power generation, automobile conversion, textile production, cold storage, and agro processing. Each of these individual focus areas have specific targets with 2027 deadlines, and the intention is to scale up operations using natural gas to give access as a transition fuel on the way to full electrification. Some of the targets under these ambitions include impacting up to 30 million homes with residential clean cooking and creating up to 6,000 jobs and impacting up to 1,200 farmers by energizing agriculture. Finally, through our National Decarbonization Plan, Nigeria also committed to removing 50% of the Nigerian urban residential sector off the national grid to complete renewable energy power in their homes. 100% clean energy utilization for backup power generation in government buildings, and also systematically transitioning the transport sector to be electric powered. These commitments all have 2050 targets. However, the work will begin in this decade of action and be scaled up over time. Let me wrap up by reiterating the urgent need for a clean energy offer to follow support and to support developing nations in achieving our bold ambitions for access, as without achieving SDG 7 by 2030, we will not achieve a global energy transition to net zero by 2050. It's been my pleasure to speak with you all today, and I look forward to the rest of the dialogue and subsequent outcomes of this dialogue. Thank you all very much.
And it's been our pleasure to have you with us, Minister Ike Azor, one of our global champions indeed. And she made a point which some people may not have wanted to hear, but is a point of realism, really, that Nigeria is committed to including gas and expanding gas in its energy offering over the next few years in order to make sure that, amongst other things, clean cooking facilities are available to all. And now I'm extremely excited to introduce you to our next speaker, a big hitter. He is Achim Steiner, Administrator of the UN Development Programme, also co-chair, remember, of the High-Level Dialogue on Energy Tomorrow with Damilola Ogunbiyi. And if anyone can analyse and outline the interlinkages between energy, development and climate, that person is Achim Steiner. So a big warm welcome to you. Thanks for joining us.
Nisha, thank you very much for your kind introduction. And I share the excitement that you bring to this event today, and indeed my fellow panelists, because as we call this event, it is celebrating the strides that we are taking in moving forward. And this high-level dialogue on energy comes at a moment in time where we are both confronted with extraordinary challenges, but also unprecedented opportunities. And I think that is, in a sense, why SDG 7 also deserves such attention at this moment in time. Now, the IPCC warns us that we are not waiting for the climate crisis to descend upon us. It is already here, and now intensifying in every corner of the globe. Nor, as the Secretary General reminded us this week here in New York at the UN General Assembly, we are not on track to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement either, while progress on many of the global goals has also been hit significantly by setbacks due to this pandemic. And yet, and I say this very deliberately, we actually stand on the cusp of a historic tipping point in 2021. We can now, and I would argue have begun already, a clean energy revolution that will radically reshape our energy systems and therefore our economies and our societies. Indeed, it will improve the well-being of millions of people and help to heal our planet as carbon emissions start to fall. At the high-level dialogue, governments and many other players in the field of energy have an opportunity to now make bold and game-changing decisions that will secure that greener, more sustainable future we all talk about, and that I know virtually every citizen on the planet would welcome. And standing shoulder to shoulder, the United Nations, as you have already heard from my colleague Inga, and we'll hear from many others, the United Nations will be on hand to support countries and communities at this pivotal moment. Now, this support will build on what I believe are tectonic shifts that are already taking place, and Inga and others before me have spoken to it. There has been a 76% reduction in proposed coal power plants since 2015 Paris Agreement. And, you know, some are rightly going to say that is not enough. But just think back 10 years and you probably would not have believed that this would really happen. Moreover, the cost of renewable energy is plummeting. Remarkably, it is now cheaper to opt for solar than to build a new coal-fired power plant in almost every country across the globe. But as we also just heard from the Honourable Minister of Nigeria, there is a transition that has to be just, and it has to, in a sense, reflect the realities of every individual country. Clearly, I would argue we are living in the midst of an energy revolution, but it will happen in different ways and in different combinations, and yes, sometimes on different pathways. Yet there is a clear danger that entire countries could be left behind. This is the challenge for any government and any decision maker at this moment. If current trends continue to 2030, over 500 million people, for example, still won't have electricity access. And this is the 21st century. This lack of energy access is simply unacceptable and unnecessary when we have the technology to solve this. Everything from solar-powered water pumps to smart energy grids and beyond. Yet, strong commitments are the first vital step to help extinguish this stubborn form of inequality. Doing so will bring power to hospitals for the first time and allow schools to open for longer. It will also drive down poverty rates and bring millions of people online in this digital age, opening up an incredible array of new opportunities. That, dear colleagues, is the logic of the SDGs and the 2030 Agenda, within which SDG is firmly embedded. In short, new energy access will bring dignity to millions of people. Now, two powerful levers can accelerate the energy revolution, and you have already heard about it from the previous speakers. First, we must seize the off-grid electrification opportunity. Distributed renewable energy solutions are a $200 billion investment opportunity that must be seized. These solutions hold the potential to realize universal energy access in Africa, and by extension, for the first time in human history across the planet, and thereby transforming the daily lives of literally hundreds of millions of people. And sometimes I'm reminded by, in a sense, the extraordinary moment in which we live, where technology has now allowed us to harness the power of the sun, and yet some of the most energy challenged and poor people, for example, a family household in Mali or Burkina Faso or Niger, who to this day has no access to electricity, happens to live in a spot on this planet that has more energy than is required to power the entire world in the year 2021. That is the moment in time in which we find ourselves. And therefore, the second critical lever, as we have already heard, is finance. We need more finance from both public and private sector. And it is estimated that clean energy investments need to more than triple every year to around 4 trillion annually by 2030. Now, some might say, well, where is that extra money going to come from? Well, a significant part of it is already budgeted and, in a sense, in national planning processes, but it is still geared towards an energy matrix of the 20th century. It simply needs to be repurposed and redirected. And then, yes, we also have to increase financing, particularly for countries who need support in this transition, a just transition. Yet objectives like these are very much achievable. That will require the kind of enabling policies that we have all discussed for years now, and we are seeing in many countries them actually being implemented and succeeding. That's why you have countries today that already can speak with both confidence and successful track records of having moved into a renewable energy system with 30, 40, 50, some soon 60 to 70% of their electricity generating capacity being renewable. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at UNDP, and not just as co-chair, proudly with Damilola, and in terms of the high-level dialogue on energy, but also heading the United Nations Development Program, we embrace this challenge wholeheartedly in terms of the transformational potential. For instance, UNDP's climate promise that we have implemented over the last 2 years has supported 119 countries in developing their national climate strategies, their NDCs, to drive down carbon emissions while expanding access to energy and also addressing the need for adaptation, because we have already lost too much time. And for the first time in our history, we have put a very bold goal forward for the next 4 years of our strategic plan, which is our contribution to the Energy Compact, a commitment to contribute to providing access to clean and affordable energy to 500 million additional people. This is extraordinarily ambitious, but it also reflects our confidence in this moment in time. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our current energy system is the leading cause of the climate crisis, which hits the world's poorest and most vulnerable the hardest, both in excluding them from access to energy, but also in the consequence of climate change. As Inga also said, it is time to ask hard questions. Can we really live in a world in which healthcare facilities grind to a halt, for instance, in the midst of a pandemic due to lack of power, where millions of people and businesses are being left behind from the benefits of economic development and improved livelihoods because they don't have access to something most fundamental to development: power, electricity. It is a moment in which we have to make courageous choices. Too many people, leaders in government, in business, but in our communities also, have not shown that courage for too long. And yet we are celebrating today the precise opposite. And the new energy compacts that are being presented in this high-level dialogue on energy are precisely the kind of illustration of these choices being made that will define the well-being of people and planet for generations to come. To global leaders gathering in New York for this UN General Assembly, I call on you, I invite you to lead from the front and make those brave decisions as the energy revolution marches forward. We in the United Nations family are right behind you, next to you, and ready to support you. Thank you so much, and Nishad, back to you.
Thank you so very much, Achim Steiner. It was good to hear about your own bold energy compact pledge there. 500 million people, additional people brought into the modern electricity world. I'd like to find out more about that, wouldn't you? Let's go to the UNDP website and do so. That's just one of very many compacts that we've been highlighting to you in the last day and a half or so. Here are some more. In fact, actually, before I introduce you to them, why don't we have a little step back and a refresher on what exactly an energy compact is? Who is it bringing together? How does it hope to actually deliver these specific goals? Here's a little film as a refresher. And just to give you a flavor of the diversity of energy compacts that have already been given to us, you can take a look at our website. Down below, you can see at the bottom of the screen the link there. And also on this platform, there's an energy compacts tab. You can catch up on some of the videos we showed yesterday and the compacts that are being announced daily. Here's another little roundup, which will give you a flavor of the kinds of organizations and the regions that we're covering. For instance, from the private sector coming up, we've got Iberdrola from Spain, big energy giant. We've got a Brazilian bank, BNDES. From Dubai, we have BR, the MENA region's leading sustainability pioneer. At a regional governmental level, we'll be hearing from the Basque region minister on the hydrogen economy plans that they have. And at a national level, we're going to hear from the Danish energy minister. So take a look at the variety of compacts we have here now.
More than 20 years ago, Iberdrola took the Kyoto Protocol seriously and started our energy transition. At the 120 billion euros invested in renewable smart grid energy storage, we transformed the company from a local Spanish utility with coal and oil into a global leader in renewables, with today more than 35,000 megawatts and emissions that are only 40 grams, which is 1/4 of those of our peers, and presence in more than 30 countries. The obstacles during the period were huge. We have to fight against governments, regulators, and competitors. But we show that it's possible to build a strong, profitable business, generate wealth and jobs, and leave a better planet for our children and grandchildren. We need to focus on the impact of climate change for humankind. The Sustainable Development Goals are the best guidance. In fact, we were pioneers to include them in our bylaws. Today, almost everyone is convinced of the need to fight against climate change. We collaborate with many actors, government, civil society, and other companies that, instead of enemies, are now just competitors or even partners. I am delighted to see that Arantxa Tapia is in this panel. The Basque Country is a good example for climate ambition, but also for industrial leadership. But it's still a long way to reach our objectives. Let me insist in two very clear messages. The United Nations is playing a key role in the fight against climate change. You started this effort globally with the Kyoto Protocol, and the Secretary General has a clear view of the urgency of the situation. The COP26 will be a crucial moment to show our commitment. We will be the main sponsors in Glasgow, where Iberdrola Scottish Power headquarters are located. I have been involved in all COP since Copenhagen, and it's impressive to see the progress achieved, but it's still not enough. We will not reach our goal if we don't invest massively in renewable energies, smart grid, and storage. And this only happens if we have clear and stable framework that give investors security and confidence. Faster administrative processes to accelerate the expansion of renewables and grid. It takes 4 or 5 years to have the permit for a solar or wind plant and only 1 year to build it. And we need new tax policies that promote decarbonization based on the principle who pollutes pay. We are still very far from there, and every day counts. If we start today, I believe we will succeed in the fight against climate change, but we will also build a stronger, more sustainable economy, able to create high-quality jobs massively. Iberdrola has been doing that for 20 years, and we are ready to continue in the coming decade with an investment plan of $170 billion up to 2030. They will allow us to be carbon zero.
Hello, I'm Gustavo Montezano, the CEO of BNDES, the Brazilian Development Bank. Amazon is a wonderful land with many beauties and biodiversity, but it faces many contradictions. One of them is that in this natural paradise, there are 3 million Brazilians who are not connected to the Brazilian power grid. Our power grid is known as one of the top renewable energy matrix in the world. And those autonomous systems, they are all oil-based. So all those communities that live in far distant regions of the Amazon, they generate a cost of $1.5 billion a year to pay for oil, dirty energy. Outraged with these situations, BNDES, who is one of the largest renewable energy lenders in the world, alongside with Eletrobras, who is the largest power company in Latin America, we join forces to change this forever. We cannot accept this situation. That's why we're proposing a joint compact to promote decarbonization of the power mix of those autonomous regions in the Amazon, replacing dirty oil expensive generation with clean, renewable, and sustainable accessible energy in the Amazon forest. And the more partners accept to come alongside with us to solve these situations, the more successful we'll be. Any member, any agent will be very welcome to join forces with BNDES and Eletrobras. So come alongside with us to support this initiative that is crucial to sustainable development of the Amazon forest. Thank you very much. See you.
The Basque government, from a region with its own identity and internationally recognized industrial and technological positioning, has incorporated two innovative initiatives for its energy compact. In any case, we are aware that in addition to these two initiatives, we are going to have to deploy all kinds of activities that contribute to promote the energy transition and action on climate change. With the initiative focused on hydrogen, we assume the commitment to create an ecosystem for the production, distribution, and consumption of hydrogen in the Basque Country based on our industrial, logistical, and technological capacities. By 2030, we foresee an installed electrolysis capacity of 300 megawatts and that 100% of the produced hydrogen will be of renewable or low-carbon origin. We are currently building a new business technology park with the presence of different companies and knowledge and research centers in the field of hydrogen. It is estimated that until 2026, 1,300 million euros will be invested and that 1.3 thousand direct jobs and 6.7 thousand indirect jobs will be created. The second initiative, called Ekiola, a program with which we will create citizen cooperatives and will allow citizens to participate in the generation and management of photovoltaic plants of between 1 and 5 megawatts. Each cooperative will build and manage photovoltaic parks that will produce energy based on the demand required by the cooperative members themselves. The program has started in 2021 and we have 10 management cooperatives and we are about to create the first consumer cooperative. We would like to have about 40 cooperatives by 2024, although one of the complexities lies in the economic involvement that it requires from families. The minimum number of participants required to develop an energy community under the Ekiola initiative is 400 citizens. This represents the participation of between 12 and 20,000 families by 2024. Both actions, that of hydrogen with a technological and industrial nature, and Ekiola with social assets and private individuals, add up and express the reality of the energy transition and action on climate change. It is about the need for a country framework agreement that we focus on our Basque Green Deal with an anticipation, mitigation, and above all, planning and action strategy. An energy, climate, social, and an economic challenge in which the Basque government wants to involve all local institutions, economic and social agents, as well as citizens, especially with the younger generation in mind.
I'm very proud to present the Danish Energy Compact, reducing national CO2 emissions by 70% in 2030 compared to 1990. This is the ambitious goal that we've set for ourselves in Denmark. Transforming the energy system is key to make it happen. In Denmark, we expect to cover 100% of our electricity demand with renewable energy by 2028. Denmark is also committed to increase ambition on mitigation, adaptation, and finance in support of the most vulnerable countries on the planet. This is why we will scale up climate finance for developing countries to at least $500 million annually by 2023. This is double the amount of 2019. We are strengthening our efforts to mobilize public and private finance from a variety of sources to accelerate the green transition globally. This means that the Danish contribution will represent at least 1% of the collective target of mobilizing $100 million. This is well above Denmark's share of developed countries' GNI. Internationally, Denmark is also working to phase out coal, oil, and gas, and we're providing technical assistance and capacity building in the spirit of the Paris Agreement. This we're doing in 19 different countries through bilateral energy corporations. These and many other initiatives are highlighted in our Energy Compact. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Let's get to it.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank the UNHLDE for facilitating this session. It's an honor to be speaking alongside leaders who are critical to shaping clean energy initiatives around the world. I am Khalid Al-Haraymel. I am the Group CEO of BIA. We are a leading environmental management company in the UAE, and our vision is to pioneer a sustainable quality of life in the Middle East. We work towards this vision by providing a full scale of environmental solutions, including waste management and recycling, consulting and research, sustainable transport, digital solutions, and of course, clean energy. Our targets are driven by the UAE's agenda for sustainability and clean energy, which aligns with the SDG 7 and Paris Agreement. UAE's energy compacts will facilitate 30% of power from clean energy sources by 2030 and 70% by 2050. To begin our contribution to national targets, BIA has 3 key clean energy projects in the Emirate of Sharjah and the UAE. The first one is in partnership with Masdar, the Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company. BIA has launched a waste-to-energy plant. The plant will turn unrecyclable waste into energy source, increasing the landfill diversion rate in Sharjah from 76% to 100%. As a result, Sharjah will become the first zero-waste city in the region. Annually, the waste-to-energy plant will process up to 300,000 tons of waste and displace 450,000 tons of CO2 emissions. Our second clean energy project is our solar landfill. As Sharjah becomes a zero-waste city, the 47-hectare landfill will be sealed. So that its land is not left unutilized, we are building a 120-megawatt solar plant on top of it. In addition, our new headquarters, a LEED Platinum certified building that will be carbon neutral, will also be powered by its own solar plant. The third clean energy project is our waste-to-hydrogen plant in partnership with Chinook Sciences from the UK. Through gasification technology, unrecyclable plastic and wood waste will become a source for green hydrogen. Green hydrogen from the plant will be fed into a fueling station, powering a fleet of hydrogen vehicles daily. Through these initiatives, BIA hopes to demonstrate that clean energy projects are not only critical for our environment, but also financially viable and scalable to meet modern energy demands. Thank you.
The CEO of BIA in the UAE, rounding up that little segment of energy compacts. There were some really eye-catching pledges there. I was particularly struck by the call from Brazil to clean up and decarbonize power to the Amazon forests, and a call for others to join in. Were you listening? Well, here we've got some more energy compacts coming up for you from some young people. SDG 7 Youth Constituency Compact is one of them. And do you remember UNGA Anderson from UNEP talking about the Cool Climate, the Cool Coalition Compact? Well, they're about to speak too. Let's have a little listen.
In a warming world, access to cooling is not a luxury. We all depend on it. Cooling solutions can deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals by improving agricultural supply chains and boosting farming income, guaranteeing vaccine cold chains, preventing heat-related deaths, and improving comfort and productivity. We need to rapidly expand access to cooling, but these solutions must be efficient and climate-friendly to achieve the Paris Agreement and Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. The Sustainable Energy for All initiative and the Cool Coalition hosted by UNEP are launching a compact on sustainable cooling for all to accelerate action towards efficient, climate-friendly cooling and cold chain. By developing national cooling action plans and sustainable cold chain strategy, by implementing minimum energy performance standards, by joining the race to zero, you can help us make sustainable cooling for all a reality. Be cool and join us.
Excellencies, members of the audience, the climate crisis is here with scientific evidence before our eyes pointing towards a cataclysmic future. This cannot be ignored, and the youth are rallying to address and limit the unprecedented effects of the climate crisis. In the coming months, the SDG 7 Youth Constituency will work to, firstly, ensure inclusion of youth priorities in the global and national energy transition agendas. Secondly, help youth-led organizations to access scale-up and startup funding and promote their commitments and actions to support achievement of SDG 7. Thirdly, create initiatives which seek to train at least 3,000 young people annually on how they could actively contribute to achievement of SDG 7. While we are mobilizing youth to take action, we urge member states and other stakeholders to raise their ambitions and ensure a rapid, inclusive, and just energy transition. We call on you to increase funding for clean energy innovators and enterprises, support training of the clean energy sector workforce, and establish channels for civic participation in decision-making. In addition to being bold, energy compacts should fully reflect the needs of the youth. And with this in mind, we vow to hold to account both your actions and your pledges. History will judge us harshly if we do too little or too late to advance the energy transition. We cannot afford it. Help the next generation advance the most ambitious goals of the energy transition. We face the greatest existential challenge of our age, and the fate of the human condition lies in our hands.
Wasn't that an inspiring call? The fate of humanity does indeed lie in our hands. And we're going to share with you one more energy compact before a couple of panel discussions coming up, just the other side of the top of the hour. And this, let me introduce you now to David Lecoq and his phenomenal team at AR, the Alliance for Rural Electrification, which is the oldest and largest global business association for renewables in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Let's take a look.
Millions of people and businesses are already powered by decentralized renewable energy today, all over Africa, Asia, and Latin America, often for the very first time. Hi, my name is David Lecoq, and I work with the Alliance for Rural Electrification, known as ARE. ARE today brings together around 200 member companies and organizations all along the decentralized renewable energy value chain, delivering clean power all over Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Currently, around 800 million people still do not have access to electricity, and an additional 1.5 billion have an unreliable connection. This keeps communities in the dark, and it hampers sustainable and economic development. In parallel, not enough jobs are being created, and the climate is changing for the worse. So what to do? What to do to put the world back on track and to meet the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations by 2030? For its part, ARE, fueled by its huge growth over the past year, and together with all our members and the wider sector, is ready to step up to the plate, to scale up immensely, and to, in effect, meet the challenges that we have in front of us today. That is why ARE is very proud to present to you today its brand new energy compact. Very concretely, by 2030, ARE strives to enable the private sector to deliver an additional 500 million electricity connections, to catalyze 5 million green jobs, and to help avoid at least 1 billion tons of CO2 equivalent emissions. This is the commitment of ARE. This is the commitment of the sector that we are representing. So with this, we are reaching out to you, the governments, the philanthropies, and the corporate world to join hands and to effectively join the ARE movement so that we can work together to reach these ambitious yet eminently achievable targets for a prosperous, a green, and an electrified tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention.
You've just heard that these are ambitious but eminently achievable targets. So how do we achieve them? That's going to be the focus of our next panel discussion, which is called Advancing the Energy Transition in End-Use Sectors. They're going to look beyond electrification to greening other end-use sectors, and of course, energy efficiency, which we keep hearing about. And to give us some framing thoughts to set up this panel discussion, we're pleased to have this contribution from David Marchik, the COO of the IDFC, the International Development Finance Corporation.
Hello, my name is David Marchik, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the United States International Development Finance Corporation, or DFC. As America's development finance institution, the DFC partners with private sector entities all around the world to finance solutions to the most critical problems facing emerging markets today. Insufficient energy access in developing countries is one of the world's greatest development challenges. Energy poverty poses a significant hurdle not only to quality of life, but also to health and economic growth. And the climate crisis, we all know, represents one of the most urgent challenges of our time, an existential threat, especially for emerging economies, which are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of the crisis. To combat these challenges, the DFC is focused on advancing the United States support for SDG 7 by expanding access to affordable and reliable electricity across developing markets while reducing global emissions. Through our development strategy, the Roadmap for Impact, we've established the goal of expanding and providing energy access to at least 10 million people in the developing world by 2025, and we're well on our way to achieving that goal. Just a couple of months ago, for example, we announced a project in Sierra Leone, a power project which will electrify 25% of that country. Our work in the energy sector also has a strong focus on climate, and we're driving renewable projects all around the world. DFC's work to support SDG 7 will allow for continued economic growth in the countries that need electricity generation the most. By bolstering investments in climate solutions and expanding access to renewable energy, we can make a meaningful impact on people's lives and move the planet towards a more sustainable future. Thank you very much.
David Marchik there, setting the scene really for our panel discussion. And I'm going to hand over smartly now to our panel moderator, Dr. Nawal Al-Hassani, permanent representative of the UAE to IRENA, and a hugely committed leader in the climate action space. Over to you, Nawal.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nisha. Thank you very much for such an amazing introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the UN High-Level Dialogue on Energy, and welcome to our next session on advancing the energy transition. I do have the pleasure of moderating the next 20 minutes or so with some truly inspiring thought leaders in the fields of renewable energy, sustainability, and very importantly, youth engagement. As you know, the global energy transition is no longer optional. It is essential if we are to preserve our people, planet, and prosperity. The electrification and greening of end-user sectors are integral to this aim. In fact, a recent study from IRENA has shown that more than 90% of the solutions that will achieve the 1.5 degrees goal of the Paris Agreement by 2050 involve renewable energy applications, whether that's through direct supply, electrification, improved energy efficiency, green hydrogen, or bioenergy combined with carbon capture and storage. Renewables are the solution. But how? How we align as an international community on the best way forward to ensure that those most at risk from climate change and a lack of access to clean energy are not left behind is the topic of our time. Joining me to discuss these topics are the Right Honourable Patricia Scotland, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Oliver Bloom, Chief Strategy and Sustainability Officer, Schneider Electric, Alexander Commission, Chairperson of the BRICS Youth Energy Agency. Welcome to you all.
Hello, good evening.
I agree with me. So I would like to start this panel by turning to the Right Honourable Patricia Scotland. I wonder if you could capture for us the importance of this moment. As someone born in Dominica and moved to the United Kingdom at a young age, you will have a keen interest in the way the developing and developed economies are able to tackle and mitigate the consequences of the climate crisis. How can the global energy transition improve the lives and prospects of people around the world? And what do we need to see from a political and policy-making level to ensure we have the best chance of successfully rolling it out across the world?
Well, thank you, Noel, and it's really great to be with you on this panel. Now, as you know, with the rest of the world, the 54 Commonwealth countries are facing challenges from the global warming caused by the increased emissions of greenhouse gases, 2/3 of which emanate from the production and use of energy. And many developing member countries also have significant energy access gap, and expanding energy access is a priority for sustainable development. And more than half of the 759 million people across the globe without access to electricity live in our Commonwealth countries. And recognition, I think, continues to grow of the need for new levels of ambition in current efforts to recarbonize and transform the global energy system. So the message is clear. We must urgently step up our action to implement the Paris Agreement and achieve our commitments on sustainable energy. And whilst the transition pathways may differ across the Commonwealth countries, the move to clean energy systems is a common goal. And the economics of the transition are such that low carbon technologies are becoming increasingly competitive, and risks are better understood, and investment in renewable energy is thankfully rapidly growing. However, strong political will and ambition is required to establish the enabling frameworks that set the policy, the regulatory, economic, financial measures to further attract finance and scale up technology and lower costs. Now, a recent study by the Commonwealth Secretariat found that Commonwealth countries were modestly progressing in terms of increasing access to modern energy and access to clean cooking. However, large gaps generally remain, and critically important to the achievement of these goals is adopting technologies and securing the significant investment required for their implementation. So what we are looking at in the Commonwealth with Sustainable Energy for All is, so what do we do? How do we convert this into real action? And what we've done is we've come up with a toolkit for the small, the SIDS. And you know that 38 countries classified by the UN as small island developing states, but 25 of them are in our Commonwealth family. So despite the significant clean energy resource potential, SIDS are characterized by their heavy dependence on imported fossil fuels that result in some of the highest electricity costs in the world and significant supply chain challenges, which puts real pressure on already constrained economies. So the pandemic has made it worse. It's increased the vulnerabilities of SIDS in varying degrees, and it's highlighted the need to transition towards clean energy to increase energy security and economic resilience. So to address this challenge, the Commonwealth Secretariat, under the Commonwealth Sustainable Energy Transitions Agenda and Sustainable Energy for All, have jointly developed this toolkit to assist SIDS develop business cases and strategies to facilitate investment in clean energy projects, particularly in the power sector. And the toolkit will be utilized to develop country-specific business cases that detail cost-benefit analysis and strategies needed to unlock investment and guide the formulation of recommendations that seek to maximize the socio-economic and climate benefits of a clean energy pathway. And SIDS will be supported to translate their clean energy transition plans into real business and investment opportunities with detailed information for investors on the country-specific elements. Now, this is vital because it will be a key enabler, such as finance and international support required for this transition. And we're hoping that we'll get to launch the toolkit on the thematic day for energy on the 4th of November 2021. We got a wonderful opportunity at COP, and we will hopefully be showcasing this in our pavilion. So I hope everyone's going to come along and really help us. The study is really important because it's emphasizing the need that our Commonwealth countries have to get the pricing right for energy commodities. And we're really recommending the introduction of a carbon pricing policy to account for the negative externalities of carbon emissions and ending any price distortions arising from subsidies to hydrocarbon fuels. So a carbon price and the elimination of the fossil fuels subsidies will reinforce the trend of falling costs for renewable energy and facilitate the adoption of these technologies, and the financial resources available from carbon price revenues and the savings from elimination of the subsidies can be used to support the development of the new technologies and hasten the necessary transition to these technologies. If we really are not going to leave people behind, we've got to find the practical ways of enabling this transition to take place in the least painful way possible, and we've got to enable all of us to get there, not just the SIDS, but also we've got to look at those countries who are 98% dependent on commodities, and we've got to build a bridge so they can transition in the way they would like to, but they need the resources to actually do it. So there's a big task for us, but I reckon that if we work together, we can do this.
So speaking about working together, can I have just a quick follow-up? As someone who has fought fiercely for the rights and recognition of women, how critical is it that women play a central role in this once-in-a-generation transition?
I think it's vital because, you know, we are just over 50% of the world's population. And yet, if you look at how badly women are disadvantaged in this area, it's heartbreaking. The renewable energy sector offers, you know, diverse opportunities, but how many women are enabled to participate in this? IRENA, as you know, estimates that 32% of women are employed in renewable energy industry compared to 22% in the energy sector overall. But still, within renewables, women's participation in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the STEM jobs, is far lower than in administrative jobs. Well, if we're going to use all the talent, we have to take advantage of the extraordinary talent we have in women. And I'm so proud of what IRENA's doing to highlight these issues, because if you look at women in many developing member countries, they spend 1.4 hours a day collecting fuel for wood to cook with, 4 hours in cooking. And they are the ones spending most of the time in the household, and they are disproportionately affected by indoor pollution. And the World Health Authority estimates that household air pollution causes 4 million premature deaths every year. And the Commonwealth Secretariat, through its sustainable energy programs, we want to do something about it. And women are right at the core of that. So we're supporting member countries to focus on solutions for clean cooking through peer-to-peer exchanges and access to clean cooking technology. We're encouraging greater participation of women in this rapidly growing sector so that whilst ensuring the fair distribution of socio-economic opportunities for the global energy transformation. And you know that I believe that unless we have women involved in this, we haven't got a hope of succeeding. So we've got to promote the inclusive energy transition, mainstreaming gender to increase women, and I have to say youth, because, you know, 60% of our Commonwealth is under the age of 30, and it's their future, so we've got to make sure that young people are involved in this, that they're participating in the policy making, in the energy transition, the value chains in our member countries. And we're doing something about it by creating books targeted at our 7 to 12-year-olds. So we can't leave anyone behind. It's going to take all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
About making sure women, and I'm glad there are two of us on this call.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Absolutely. And this actually brings us back to a very important question on who is responsible to do what. So it's now a good opportunity to turn to you, Mr. Bloom. I would like to look at the corporate and the role of corporates in this equation. In keeping with the work that Schneider Electric does to help make business more sustainable, how can business models be redesigned to integrate renewable energy into their mix? How can big business be part of the energy transition? And if we have time, secondly, what innovations are needed in the technologies we have at our disposal to boost sustainable practices and renewable energy use? So I'm giving you two questions at one, and I hope you will have time to address both of them.
I'll do my best. Thank you for having me, first of all. And probably just to rebound on the previous question, just to let you know that for a company like Schneider, with a tech and industrial company, we have 45% of female in our executive committee at Schneider. So just to tell you that it's possible, we were at 10 probably 5 years ago, but as you rightly said, the participation of female in this transformation is very critical. And I have a good news, by the way, our female talents are passionate by sustainability and climate transition, and we see more and more female coming from the engineering background who want to participate. Now, moving to your question, I'm not going, of course, to set the stage of why we need to go faster, because I'm sure everyone knows that we are behind the commitment of the Paris Agreement and we have to go much faster. At Schneider Electric, we are, as we say, a digital partner to help our customer for efficiency and more sustainability. And of course, there are a lot of things we are doing for our own company, but we have been also supporting, because it's our job and mission in life, many multinationals in the past 10 years to go through their own energy transition. So I will probably use that experience that we have accumulated to answer your question. First, there is a good news. Corporate world is moving. I think we have seen a huge acceleration in the past 24 months. All companies in the world are building their pledge, they are building their action plan, they are progressing, and we see also the investor having a strong focus. That's a very good news. We know it's not enough, but I can tell you, compared to 2 years ago, we see that the corporate world is finally moving. Just an example, an article I was reading this morning, 85% of board in the largest French company have now a dedicated committee to supervise the sustainability strategy and therefore the environment strategy. So that's good news. Now, this point being said, what I can share, we see very different profile of corporate company. Some of them who have started earlier, some of them who are just joining, but for sure they need all of them to go faster. What the best of them, probably, that's the most interesting to answer your question, what the best of the company are doing. 3 things: they strategize, they digitize, they decarbonize. What I mean by strategize, like any kind of other business topic in a company, you cannot address the climate change differently. You need to have a strategy, which means that you need to measure where you start, you need to define your trajectory, and you need to define a roadmap with clear milestones. But the most important, you need to make sure the leadership is engaged. Point number 2, you need to digitize. And that's very important, because I think we are always very theoretical about both climate pledge and so on and so forth. But I'll give you a parallel. Would you imagine a large company in the world of today managing its company without an ERP for finance measurement? In the world of tomorrow, the only way to tackle the climate transition is to make sure that all large multinationals also have an ERP for energy and sustainability purpose. Objective at the end of the day is to track and measure your energy consumption and how you are going to evolve with your own CO2 emission. And the third part, I call it decarbonize, because this is what you can do to reduce your energy consumption. So back to your question, it's a lot about energy efficiency, how you can replace by leveraging more renewable. And the third piece is really how you engage your entire ecosystem. I'm not going to give you too much detail on each of them because we don't have the time today, but of course, energy efficiency is very critical. Access to renewable energy is very important. I tell you, for instance, at Schneider Electric, we moved from 10% of renewable energy to 80% in the past 3 years. So just to tell to other companies that it's possible and that it's a must if you want really to go towards your 1.5 degree trajectory. And the last point I like to mention, really to address your specific question on business model, yes, companies have to revisit a very, very large number of existing process and business model. Maybe if I just take one example to connect with the topic of circularity, I think all of us as company, we have to reinvent what we do in our business. And that can start with not selling any more product, but more and more looking at, can we rent solution? In our case, that will be, for instance, what we call energy as a service. Second example is how do we extend the life of our product? But it means that you have to restart from the design of your product to make sure that those products can be repairable, they can be retrofitable. That's very, very important. Can we introduce more sharing economy also in our industry? And without mentioning, of course, things like recycled material. So yes, to answer your question, definitely we need to revisit our business model, because if we just look at reducing our energy consumption, therefore our CO2 emission on the basis of what we are going to do, what we are doing today, we will only tackle one part of the equation. The only way to get to the trajectory of 1.5 is to revisit completely the way we are doing business in our company. And I will just give you an example also. It's not only what you do in your own scope 1 and 2, which are your direct and indirect emission, but it's also what you do with your own ecosystem and your supplier and how you can engage them in that journey. And I will finish to manage the time on your second question, on innovation. I have a good and a bad news, and the bad news probably for you, innovation, technology are available today. We don't need to invent too much. Of course, we can always innovate for more progress, for more technology, but the technology are available today to deliver what I've just described in the past minutes. It's just a question of willingness. And the second point that I would like to mention, we don't have the time to wait 10 more years for more technology. We have to act fast. We have to act now. And the good news is digital has made a lot of progresses in the past 10 years, and the digital technology are an enabler for this active energy management. And I will finish probably with one exception that has been mentioned in the first part of our panel. There is probably in the world, and the number can change depending on the source, but 800 million people who don't have access to energy. And that's a place where we still need to innovate. If we want to provide green and affordable energy to the people who have zero access or limited access, that's definitely an area where we need to bring much more innovation. But for the rest of the world, I think technology available, it's just a question of willingness to make it happen and to make it happen now.
Absolutely, absolutely. We know enough on what can be done and what should be done. And then we also need to engage with each other to make it happen. So, Alexander, I would like to come to you now to focus on the next generation of climate activists and conservationists. How have you seen young people from the BRICS countries unite to develop the energy agenda? And if we have time, what is unique about the experience of young people from Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa that the rest of the world can learn from?
Thank you, Dr. Afsani, for this. And well, I can assure you that the BRICS countries were at the front line of the youth energy engagements and youth-led actions. In 2015, when the United Nations General Assembly introduced the Agenda 2030, the BRICS youth announced that they will launch a youth-led agency to take a BRICS stance in the issues of energy development and promoting the role of young people in the decision-making process. Since then, a lot has been achieved. And basically, I'm a live example that the BRICS youth has made it, has leveraged their voices to such global UN-driven discussions. For instance, our annual flagship BRICS Youth Energy Outlook, which reflects the vision of the youth for prospective energy challenges, is annually reviewed by 5 ministers of energy. The BRICS heads of state and their administrations consider the achievements of the energy youth and highlight them in their summit declarations and documents. Additionally, the BRICS youth has not only been driving very successful initiatives and campaigns, like from BRICS with SDG and the BRICS Sustainable Ideas Bank, but created a real working channel to include the youth and SDG 7 policy advocacy, and now presents their own youth energy compact with potential impact audience over 100 million people. Can you imagine that? And in this regard, BRICS Youth had not only developed 3 energy cooperation tracks between the BRICS countries, which are research, climate, sustainability, and of course the policy advocacy, but also had managed to bring BRICS perspective to the key international platforms like UNGA76 and of course the COP26, where we'll be also there and facilitating you all the way to 2030. And something concerning the unique experience that might be taken from BRICS countries is, of course, that it is actually not limited only to 5 countries. Throughout the years, the community has become a truly global platform for youth from the developing world to drive action and promote their youth vision for the future of energy. And that means that the topics we prioritize and the way we do things in BRICS is also appealing to the rest of the world. Therefore, I'm certain that we are on the right path. We just don't copy others. Having said that, I believe that young people from BRICS countries and beyond appreciate open partnership and commitment that we are constantly pursuing. And this is something that I would call unique.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you very much. Does anybody would like to maybe comment on the role the youth has to play in this important work that we are all trying to pursue?
Well, on my side, what I would like to say, their role is fundamental, and I like to say that the good news we have is that the youth of today have a lot of knowledge that they can immediately bring to companies, and I'm sure to other organizations. And we see it in our company like Schneider. You hire people who are 25 years old. They are already very much digital native, obviously, compared to some other generation, but they are so passionate about sustainability and climate change that they are also a very big source of innovation for companies. So yes, I do believe that they have a very big role to play in the private companies.
And of course, as I've made clear, with 60% of our population in the Commonwealth, we've got about almost 2.5 billion people. They are amazingly important because they are the majority. And in terms of the future, of course, this is their world. And what we have found is when you engage young people at every level, on the policy level, on the implementation level, you really get a very high quality outcome, because they can help you to know how do you take control of an agenda in a way that will be attractive and engage them. And without them, that doesn't happen. So I think looking through their eyes, walking with them is hugely enriching for all of us. And we in the Commonwealth certainly have taken that view, and we're supporting them through the Innovation Awards, which I'm about to launch, and they're coming up with some brilliant, innovative ideas. And it's really interesting to see that the majority of people who come up with brilliant ideas, unfortunately, tend to come up with them before their 30s. So the 3 of us on our call may be a bit challenged, but one of us may not be.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for your input. Absolutely right. This has been a truly insightful and inspirational session, which, as someone who is passionate about capturing the promise of the global energy transition, has been a huge pleasure to be part of. To put our dialogue of the last 20 minutes into context, I will conclude by saying we don't get a second chance when it comes to our planet. This is the only one we will ever get. We have heard today of the political will, the requirements from the corporate and business world, and the wholehearted commitment of young people from across the world to making the global energy transition come to fruition. The least we can do is our individual part, and collectively we will make this moment the time that we turn the tide on the climate crisis. Thank you. I wish you a productive and fruitful discussions for the rest of the summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nawal Al-Hosseini, and to your great panelists. I was particularly struck by what we heard about the fact that we've got the technologies available now. We don't need to wait for a huge wave of innovations in so many areas, but there is one area where we really do need to come up with more innovation. And that is to make sure that we deliver on SDG 7. So it's interesting to get the complexion of the different challenges there. Thank you very much, panelists. So joining us now live, we have a number of leaders who are going to tell us about their particular energy compacts from different parts of the world and how they expect to deliver from them. First, we're going to go over to Delhi in India, and we're going to join Sumant Sinha, who's the founder, chairman, and CEO of Renew Power. And he is an award-winning leader, really, in this field. So let's cross over to you now and say, hello, how are you doing, Sumant Sinha?
Hey, I'm good, Nisha. Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah, so let me just talk about our energy compact. Renew Power is India's largest renewable energy company. We generate about 1% of India's total electricity production, and so far helped mitigate about 0.5% of India's total carbon emissions. We are, as part of our energy compact, we have agreed to the following, that we will reach a renewable energy generation capacity of 18 gigawatts or 18,000 megawatts by the year 2025, up from our current installed 6,000 megawatts. So that's a 3 times growth in our total capacity in the next 4 years. Two, that we will also be looking at round-the-clock power through renewable energy, which is actually quite unique because, as we all know, renewable energy is intermittent power. We will provide renewable energy, which is round-the-clock power, and we will do so at a price that is at least 20% lower than the price of alternative coal-based power. We will do this by all the way up till 2027. Number 3, that we pledge that we will improve our energy efficiency through digital analytics and artificial intelligence, that we will deploy a minimum of 30 use cases so as to improve our productivity of our assets by at least 1.5 to 2% by the year 2025. 4, that we will actually improve our energy efficiency of our assets by 2 to 2.5% over the current values by 2030. And 5, that we will get into manufacturing as well. So not only will we be a generator of renewable energy, we will also manufacture equipment, at least 2 gigawatts of solar cells and modules by 2023, and at least 500 megawatts of wind turbines every year by 2023 as well. And we also pledge that we will become a net zero company by 2050. Now, the uniqueness of our energy compacts is that no renewable energy company at this point is talking about providing round-the-clock power using purely renewable energy sources at a price that is cheaper than coal. So that, I think, is one area in which we are fairly unique. The second thing is we're talking about increasing our energy efficiency of our assets by at least 2 percentage points through the use of digital technologies, which is again something that is fairly unique. And number 3, that most renewable energy companies stay in the area of renewable energy generation, but we are pledging that we will also go into equipment manufacturing, which is very important for a country like India to create the manufacturing ecosystem as well. And so the fact that we are pledging to get into manufacturing of solar equipment and wind equipment is fairly unique. So in that sense, our pledges are fairly comprehensive. They cover across a broad area of renewable energy, but they're also fairly unique. And that is, I think, what will help differentiate our compacts from compacts of a number of other companies in our segment as well. Thank you so much.
Really clear, really comprehensive. Thank you very much, Sumant Sinha. I was particularly struck by 2 in particular, bringing down the price of energy 20% lower than the conventional. That's so important in terms of affordability. And what you were saying about actually delivering much needed jobs with the equipment. So, really impressive. Thank you very much, Sumant Sinha.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on now, and we're joined by Koen Peters, who's the Executive Director of GOGLA. I hope I've pronounced that right, which is really the voice of the off-grid solar industry. Let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. I'd like to talk about the GOGLA Compact to power 1 billion lives before 2030. GOGLA is an association of more than 200 off-grid companies and organizations worldwide. And over the past decades, our members have delivered standalone solar-powered products to already more than 400 million people in the world. And by doing this, they deliver big impacts and much better quality of life for the users of these products, millions of jobs, billions of dollars of extra income for the households and SMEs, hundreds of millions of tons of reduced carbon dioxide emissions, and of course, making all these households, SMEs and farmers much more climate resilient. Our industry has shown that achieving universal electricity access is actually entirely possible. The technologies exist, the demand exists, the distribution model exists, and they're all proven and ready for replication. But what we do need to do is to scale up, and unfortunately, that's not happening right now. To achieve that scale, we primarily need to make it easier and more attractive for investors to invest in our industry. And we need to make our products more affordable for those people that still cannot pay for them right now. We need more concessional finance than we have today. But if all stakeholders in our sector work together, this is actually totally doable and with actually relatively small amounts of public funding. And our compact is thus about rallying all stakeholders, companies, governments, investors, and development partners behind our common goal to power 1 billion lives by 2030. Already close to 100 partners are endorsing our compact. We are encouraged to see this excitement around our own compact, and we know that by aligning around our shared objective, we can achieve it, and we can ensure that no one is left behind in the clean energy transition. So I welcome everyone to join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Koen, and thank you for that call. Again, affordability, a key element of that compact we just heard from GOGLA. I'm now going to talk to you about a joint venture between the FAO and IRENA. IRENA has been involved with energy compacts with a number of different organizations. And to tell us about this compact, I'm delighted to introduce again someone who joined us yesterday. So we're very pleased you can join us again, the Director General of IRENA, Francesco La Camera. The floor is yours, Mr. La Camera.
Thank you very much, Nisha. And it's really a pleasure to see you again today. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to join Chu Dongju, the Director General of UNFAO, to showcase our joint energy compact on energizing agri-food system with renewable energy. Achieving the 2030 agenda and the Paris Agreement will require ambitious, action-oriented partnership, cutting across sectors. The IRENA FAO partnership is one of such examples. Energy and food systems are deeply connected. Agri-food systems consume about 30% of the world's energy. And energy is responsible of a third of agri-food system emission. A joint approach to the energy transition food system transformation is therefore necessary. IRENA and FAO signed a memorandum of understanding this year to jointly advance renewables adoption in agri-food chain. From primary production to processing and storage to cooking, renewables can play a crucial role to meet energy needs, raise income, cut food losses, enhance climate resilience, and improve access to clean cooked fuels. To tap into huge opportunity, this energy compact offers a set of concrete targets that we believe can galvanize stakeholders and facilitate investment on the ground. I will leave to my colleague and friends, the Director General of FAO, to share to you further details. Thank you very much for your attention, and back to you, Shaina.
Thank you so much, Mr. La Camera, and thank you for making the time to explaining to us yourself why IRENA got involved in this important initiative. Because indeed, agri-food systems, biodiversity loss accounts for something like 30% of emissions